Hi, I'm Lachlan. Xamarin Developer, as Kim said, with Cooking the Books. Been there about a year and a half now. I also tutor at RMIT, kind of on and off audio engineering and a bit of IT stuff. I play double bass in a country band. I like to ride my bike, and sometimes I do WPF development when that's what's needed, but don't tell the recruiters that. And also been tinkering around with some web development using scrapers and playing with VMs and stuff. So out of my mobile app depth recently, but been playing around with that. How do we do this? So Cooking the Books, we've got 3 different mobile apps that are all same code base, but skinned differently. And when you release them all to iOS, well, the App Store and the Google Play Store, that means 6 release processes. And so for me, what that looked like on my old MacBook Air was I'd right-click on the app, click Publish, sit around for 5 or 10 minutes, upload it to the App Store, wait for the build process, click through, yes, I agree, no, I didn't change my encryption. Then I'd go over to Android, try to build it, to test it one last time, and it didn't work because of some new SDK or something. Mess around with that for a few hours, build, clean, obliterate, probably quit my job, didn't quite do it, came close. Go through Google Play Store, and then I'd run a Python script that would fix the version numbers, change all the bits throughout the app that would go from cooking the books to drinking the profits, which is the same app, but the pubs instead of restaurants. And there, do it again for Invoice Ripper, which is more focused on doing it for invoices for non-food or beverage businesses. And then found out that I didn't change the version number and all the things that I'd uploaded were wrong, and do it all over again. And that would take half a day if things went well, for every new version of the app. And I was like, this isn't why I became an app developer, I just want to write code. So I tried going into VSTS, which is where you do everything yourself, and it was just overwhelming. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just out of uni, tried Bitrise, but I hit some kind of build error, and boss is telling me, when's the app coming out? We need it now. So I just, eventually AppCenter came along, and it's the one that I got to work, so I was stuck with it. So my new process, I hit git push, I cackle maniacally for a while, and then I go play some ping pong, because the robots in Denmark do all the work for me, and then it's in the App Store the next day. So AppCenter is basically 6 products built into one once you log in. So they call it Build, which is basically a pretty UI on a limited subset of VSTS features. There's Test, which used to be Xamarin Test Cloud, but they absorbed that. I did something. Distribute, used to be part of Hockey App. Diagnostics, I think Hockey App used to do that sort of stuff as well, so that's finding out your crashes and errors. Analytics, I think Hockey App did that. I tried Hockey App a few times, but never quite got it working. And then there's also push notifications, which you can still do through Azure Notifications Hub. Azure Notifications Hub's much more powerful, also costs more, and you need to do a bit more configuration. But both of them actually use Google Firebase under the hood, and you have to sign up for a Google account to use it. So it's a whole lot of things that all join in together. If you want to use the AppCenter CLI, you have to install Node. All the magic that AppCenter does to talk to the Apple App Store goes through Fastlane. So it looks like one neat product, but it's actually a whole lot of things just cobbled together. So Build and Distribute are my 2 favorites, and they tie in very closely. So as I go through this, the lines will blur in the demos. So you get to build and sign your mobile and desktop apps. It's not just for Xamarin, although that's all that I've got in a production scenario, but you can do your Swift, Java, React Native, Mac desktop apps, UWP a lot. Your repos on any of the big three hosting platforms, although no GitLab, but hopefully that'll get there. And yeah, you can do the builds whenever you feel like it, or just off a git push, which is the real CI/CD kind of way to do it, so you don't even have to think about it. And when you're setting up the stack, and I'll show you this in a second, you get to choose from any of 100 different versions of monos and any old Xcode. So what I used to do was I was very strict about keeping my development machine, because my development machine was my build and release machine, had to stay on the same version of Xcode, same version of mono, or you'd end up breaking it. But then when iOS 11 came out, my boss wanted iOS 11 on his phone straight away. If I was going to deploy to his phone, I'd have to upgrade, and then everything has to upgrade. So relying on your dev machine is scary. You can also run custom scripts. If AppCenter isn't enough for you in what it does itself, you can do, there's a few different points you can write bash scripts to run. So I use that for theming, so swapping from cooking the books to drinking the profits without doing anything. Hopefully, you'll be able to do it to update your version numbers. Haven't quite worked out how to do that yet. That's not where UI tests go. That bullet point's wrong. And there, sign the app for either ad hoc or App Store distribution. You can get it to run on real devices. So with the test cloud, which usually costs money, you can get a little bit of that for free. Just in your build configuration, if you check run on a real device, it'll just open it up on whatever iOS or Android device is sitting vacant in the test cloud at the time. And if you've got anything seriously wrong with your configuration, your app won't even boot, and that's what you really don't want your customers getting, so you get that bit for free. And then yeah, triggers distribution. Now, this isn't just a marketing spiel. I want to show you how it actually works, and I want to show you me making some mistakes and kind of the things that'll catch you out. So I'm going to go through adding a new app in AppCenter hooked up to a real repo. Before I get started on that, any questions so far? Cool, ask at any time. So I'm just going to say add new, going to do an app, call it the Unofficial App Centre App, and I'm naming it so I can spell it the Australian way if I like. So this will be an iOS app built in Xamarin. As I said, could do Mac, could do Windows, iOS, Xamarin. I wasn't connected to the internet. Surprising I got that far. So that means all of that was loaded into the browser already. Unofficial. Something's come up on eBay. iOS, Xamarin. And I'll go straight to build. When I was on here this morning, that still said VSTS, but they've cleaned it up already. This one's on GitHub. Half my apps are on GitHub, half of them are on Bitbucket. You can't even tell the difference once it's working. Goes in, tells me I've just got one master branch because I'm naughty. Configure my build. Now this took me a while to work out. You have to tell it I'm building the iOS project, not the solution, because if you try to deploy a whole solution to an iPhone, it won't do anything. Xcode, so you can choose Xcode 10, 9.4.1, mono, various versions. I'm going to go with the stack that I know works on my dev machine. It would probably work on the newer ones, but I know that's good. Get the choice of device or simulator. And I'm going to say build this on every push. Auto increment build numbers. Unfortunately, that's just for apps that you distribute within AppCenter. Those aren't the version numbers that go to the App Store. I'm hoping they'll get that worked out one day, but for now, you do still have to do that manually. I think I spoke to a few people at the last one and I lied and said it could do that. Oh, I was wrong. I didn't mean to lie. Environment variables. I mainly use them to be there for the bash scripts that I run. It's detected there are no scripts in my repo. Got to sign your build if you want to send it out. Now I'm going to skip over the bit of... I hadn't thought about how to work with the full screen for this bit. I'm going to skip over how to go through the iTunes generation of P12s and certificates and provisioning profiles. If anyone wants to ask me about that later, I'm happy to, but I'm not going to bore you with me doing it wrong a few times here now. Oh, I just bumped the refresh button. Nice build. Bear with me just a moment. Provisioning profile, P12. Yes, if you're distributing for simulators, you don't. I've never distributed for simulators. I guess there's a situation where it's useful to people if your testers are just working on a laptop, but the way I work is our developers will run in a simulator because that's quick to sideload, but any of the real testing from beta testers, I want them doing it on real devices because things are a bit different. As well as there's the occasional performance or actual code thing that's different, but more importantly, kind of UI, the interaction of a mouse and a keyboard. If it feels comfortable on a mouse and a keyboard, that doesn't necessarily mean it'll feel nice on an iPad or an iPhone. So I want to know what it's like in the real world with bad network and fat fingers. Distribute builds. You can send it straight to the store, although you have to have released your app once to the store first. I'm just going to send it to the testers of the app. Save and build.
So you're saying you have to have done one sort of manual deployment to the store?
Yeah, your app has to be live in the App Store, going through iTunes Connect the slow, annoying way once first, so that you've got to tell Apple a bunch of the little, yes, I do this, no, I don't want that feature before this can be smart enough to do it again. And it's only in the past couple of weeks that they've got to a point where it can be full release process, get push to live in the App Store. Until very recently, you still had to do the last few manual processes. So I kind of watched this build up from, it was just my build that I'd download the IPA, upload it to the App Store. Then they added into AppCenter the option to send your own IPA, which is your published packaged up app. You could use AppCenter to send an IPA off your local computer to Apple, and you could use AppCenter to build it, but there was no way to join those two bits of AppCenter together. You had to download it and then upload it straight back to the same page. So that's running there now. And we don't have to sit around and watch this, but if you read through those build logs, you'll see lots of mentions of VSTS and TFS and lots of stuff that's just the same as when you're doing your ordinary build in your IDE. But while we do that, I'll show you a couple of the cool parts of build that I take advantage of that we skipped over in that. So captured one of the apps I'm working on at the moment that is not quite in the App Store yet, but we're distributing it internally and to external testers a fair bit. I've got two different branches set up here. So they're two different Git branches that distribute to different lists of people. The develop branch, put it to manual for some reason, was meant to be on push. That'll go to the other developers for kind of first stage testing, and then testing goes out to the non-technical testers once it's past that stage. So once you've got it set up in here, you can spend all your time, I use source tree or in your terminal or whatever, and kind of target different audiences without thinking about logging into a web browser too much. So as I was saying before, with all our different versions that come off the same code base, you need to set up a different project in here for each app store. So this CTB release and CTB release Droid, it's triggered off the same Git push, but one sends it to the App Store, iTunes App Store, the other to Google Play Store. When I come in here, heads up, that number doesn't update. 7.4 I think was the first successful build I did. We're now up to 8.1. So don't get scared if you log in and see that's wrong. So here's all my branches. Last release was 4 weeks ago. So here it's picked up as a post-clone script. So to do that, inside your repo, right next to the relevant CS proj, you create a bash script called AppCenter postclone.sh, or there's also pre-build and also post-build. The difference there is if you want to do some scripting things to your app, either as soon as it's cloned or basically just after you've brought in the nougats, or right at the end. So I do that there to do the theming, but if you've got a script that relies on the nougats being there, you do that later. But by putting it before the nougats, if I've done something wrong on my script, it'll fail before I waste 5 minutes of my build time. And then that script is reliant on this environment variable, appcode CTB. And I'll go over to one more. So this is just a bash script, which you write for iOS or Android building. If you're building for Windows Phone, you write PowerShell. That's just some debug stuff so that I can know my script's really running. That just says if appcode CTB, which was that environment variable, I change one line in my app.xaml.cs so that all the programmatic bits know to change over. I swap in a different splash screen, swap in a different main activity and a different Android manifest. And these are all just little things like changing the loading spinner from hot plate spinning around to a beer bottle spinning around, a different splash screen. So for me, this was a learning experience because I've never really done any bash scripting before. Something to watch out for is that there's a slightly different flavor of bash on whatever build server you're using to the Mac runs. So there's something, I think I had to change the quotation marks or the escaping of characters. Just little something to watch out for. Any questions on any of that?
So you're basically composing your application, just injecting different pages in like lists.
Yeah, so if I look at my, let's look at where that actually is. Look in the books. iOS. So info.plist, which we're all used to, that's the file that is used when I'm doing my dev and stuff. But then when it builds, it replaces that with this ctb info.plist, but gives it the name info.plist. And inside there, bundle display name, cooking the books. It's got the bundle identifier, all those things that are necessary to get it into the App Store looking like it is that app. And then the drinking the profits, info.plist, different bundle, different display name, and also it refers to a different icon. And then other than those two things, all the other changes throughout the app are just done on that one app variable that I change. So there's just one line in my app.xaml.cs. So there's a lot of conditional code throughout it of if app.appcode equals CTB, do this. If not, if it's drinking the profits, use this different loading icon, use this different resource dictionary, that sort of stuff.
What about, so do you have any, do you see where you're targeting feature flags or where this is kind of converged? Like, do you have
Yep, I've got that too. In this one here. And I'm sure I could write this neater, but do a switch on app code. If it's cooking the books or drinking the profits, turn on these pages. If it's invoice ripper, insert this one. If settings contains it, so that's an extra paid feature. Oh no, if they haven't paid for this feature, remove that one. I've also got, in this same bit, if you're on a phone, remove that bit. If you're a single outlet, so if you're just small business that only runs one restaurant, we turn off some pages. Or if you're a big business with 100 restaurants, you get the option to switch between them.
So you've got some stuff having build time, you've got some stuff having runtime.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome.
Wherever possible, I go for runtime because C# I'm good at, and I get all that type safety and stuff like that. Whereas for doing the build time, that's writing bash scripts, which usually I don't find out I've done something wrong until it's in the cloud and something's gone wrong. But C#, if I do something wrong, I'll usually get a red squiggly line before anything goes wrong. So I suppose that is, it lets me identify it at build time or pre-design time. Nothing. Back to my apps. That one. So I've got 3 cooking the books apps set up in here. And I haven't ended up really using this one. The idea was when I do that final push that goes to the App Center, the App Store, it'll usually take a day or so to get through. But if I wanted the testers to get the actual final version when I sent it to the App Store so they'd catch it a little bit earlier, the only way to do 2 different builds with different distributions off the same Git branch is to set up another project. I thought that would be useful, but what I've ended up doing is just we've got the testing branch and we go off that, and then it only goes into release, and then that just goes to the App Store. Yeah.
You just mentioned takes a day or so to get through.
Yep.
Is that just something specific to Apple? Because I had 10 minutes to get through.
Is that with Google?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that big a difference?
Yes, iOS, Apple have a manual process. A real person actually opens up your app on a phone and checks, does this still work?
What sort of checks would they do?
I don't know. That's
Don't tell you, or?
so if you do, when you release a brand new app the first time, the review process is about 2 weeks. They're very thorough, and I've had them come back to me and ask questions and say, how does this feature work? How does the billing of this work? you pair with hardware, what's the pairing process, and they made me film a video of pairing my app to the hardware, because as far as Apple are concerned, if it's in the App Store, it's representing their brand, and if things don't work perfectly, then they won't let it in there.
Did you have to provide the video?
Yep. Me and my colleague, so they're temperature sensors that go in a fridge, so that if the cool room in a restaurant gets up to 10 degrees, you get notified by push notification, because if your freezer goes up 10 degrees all night and you lose $10,000 worth of stock, you're out of business. So yeah, what they made us do is I was filming on my phone, and my colleague was doing the pairing process on an iPad with the hardware there.
So it didn't have to be professional?
No, it wasn't being released to the public. It was just Apple wanted to know that this was a reasonable thing to do.
Yeah.
I
suppose that's good.
Yeah.
But when you say
first time, it's about 2 weeks. It's got better than it used to be. It used to be up to a month. And then you might get rejected and then have to wait even longer. But if you're just releasing a version update, that used to be about a week, which was still better than the 2 weeks. But now it's down to, I've found if I get it in before 4 p.m, it'll go live 6 a.m. the next day, which is workable. Yeah. Although it can take a while to propagate through different regions of the App Store. But yeah, basically it goes live as soon as they can. Apple, there is a deliberate manual delay in there. But yeah, it gets through the App Centre and into Apple's hands in a matter of minutes. And that might be 10 minutes or something, but yeah, very quickly. Something to keep an eye on if you've got this many apps and 7 different builds being built off one Git push is you only get 4 hours of free build time a month. After that, you have to pay for another concurrency, which does mean you can build 2 things at once, but it also gets you unlimited build hours on those 2 concurrencies. So I think it's $100 a month, and then that gets you unlimited build time. And if you're doing parallel builds, well, you can do 2 parallel builds. And so given that when I push, it triggers 6 builds, I just let them queue. And so that means that for one of the apps, it'll probably take an hour until it's built, but that's good enough for me.
If you built on your own machine and everything's working,
yep.
You make your own beta testers too.
Yep.
I don't have 6 apps. But
yep.
I look after 3. I mean, I don't see where that, and I'm not doing iOS, so I have no experience there. But I mean, and I've got to obfuscate all the stuff, which is probably the most complicated step. But I don't really see where all this time is going.
Well, it's about 10 minutes per build. If you've just got 3 apps and you release one of them, each of them, let's say once a month, then yeah, that's only 30 minutes. So you're easily within the free tier. You're fine. If you're using this...
Even, I'm saying, just doing it manually is just as easy. I mean, the only thing you like with Android, you're uploading an APK.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about just the iOS part, how they take a day? Or are you talking about my build time?
No, I'm talking about let's just assume you're doing Android.
Yep.
Because I don't know enough about iOS. The actual procedure of once you build it, you're happy with it, you haven't forgotten to change the manifest version of it, which I've done. That's annoying. But you only ever do that once. That mistake. And then it's a matter of really, clicking the APK up there, and 10 minutes later you get an email saying it's live.
Yeah, so for one app, that's about a 10-minute thing.
Well, it's a 10-minute wait.
Yeah, as well as your build
the big
thing.
Wait is waiting for the APK to get there. In the meantime, you're filling in your what's new. Yeah,
well, I found the biggest wait and biggest frustration was when you right-click publish, the build time, that's about 10 minutes, that's your IDE locked, and you can't...
Yeah, but you're doing that through the IDE.
I used to.
I do it manually.
One of the things I found with continuous integration and putting it up in the cloud was I used to work at a place and we had no continuous integration. We just do it on a machine, like a manual process. And the problem would happen where somebody leaves, the requirements change, and then nobody can build it anymore. And then I get called back, and I haven't looked at it for 2 years. This is a real story, right? He was there.
I can understand all
if it's
those
up in the cloud.
Yeah, I can understand all those points, that makes a lot of sense, but as a single developer, I can't see why, I mean, I'm definitely using AppCenter, but not for what you're doing. I skip all the bill stuff.
Yeah. But even the situations where, like, you need a machine for some reason, if the machine fails, you get a new machine. Yeah.
And also, if you want to do beta testing with people who aren't in the building, but you're not in, or don't want that version to go to the App Store yet, when
I've used distributors like that, but
I've
used AppCenter to do that.
So in terms of the build time adding up, that's a lot of that comes from how many apps I'm doing.
Okay.
And also, I guess release cadence. There are a lot of bugs in our apps, and we'll get a phone call from a customer saying, this thing doesn't work, and we want to get that out.
And basically, you've got to have all those 6 go at once.
Oh, it wouldn't really matter if one of them came a day later or something, but yeah, every new release is all 6.
Apple.
Yeah.
Do you have many customers who've got people using both at the same time?
So most of our customers, like a restaurant, for example, there'd quite often be a few people on iOS, a few people on Android.
So that's where you've got to be really careful.
Yeah, but most, they'll be close enough. If it's just a feature that's missing and you're like, okay, you'll get it tomorrow, sort of thing.
And they understand that.
Yeah, we're very close with our customers. I've spoken to a lot of them on the phone, and they're paying an ongoing subscription fee for other services as well. So that's the build part. Few gotchas. Select the project, not the solution. You might need to change the mono version to match your version. If you've got it signing and you've got your password saved in there, it always puts the wrong password in. So if you open it up, it'll remember your passwords. I think this is maybe more Google Chrome's password management, but just watch out for that, that if you edit your build settings, make sure you know the passwords that the browser's tried to do, because it gets them all mixed up. Test on a real device adds about 10 minutes, which seems unreasonable, but it's very useful. But if you are releasing enough apps that you're not sure if you're going to hit that 4 hours in a month, be careful of that. Build numbers are internal only, mentioned that. Bash syntax isn't exactly the same. The release notes, if you've got it set up so that your Git push goes all the way to the App Store, and they turned on this feature. This feature didn't used to work, and I was reliant on it not working. But I had it turned on 2 other versions of the apps that it would just use the git commit message. And on the other one, because I had manually entered in something for the last time, it just used the last one. So I released a new version of the app with some big new features, thinking I was going to have to manually go into iTunes Connect, enter my release notes. But for that one, it just had something small like bug fixes. Whereas for my main app, that was rejected by Apple because they didn't like my release notes of merge devel into release. They said that the release notes that I tried to send to the App Store was merge devel into release, because I accidentally sent them. They said that that didn't accurately represent the changes to the app. And I agree with them, and I'm glad they stopped it.
Is it just the commit message that goes through, or the comments as well?
I guess just the commit. Where do the comments go? I don't know. When I do a commit, I'm just always in source tree, and there's just that commit box where you type stuff in. Is that what you mean? Or...
Oh, well, I guess the first line normally gets counted as the main bit of the message, and then sometimes you can add.
Oh yeah, like you might have it set up so that it automatically adds things in. It's the whole message, whatever's in that box. So if you are used to your git commit, if your git commit history is important, then make sure you yeah, I've had to change my workflow a little bit in terms, if I want to take advantage of this, of the last important commit says that. But then if you do things wrong a few times, you end up with 3 commits in a row, which might have real changes, but your message is just your release notes. So you can manually override them, but that means you have to go into the browser and into either App Centre or iTunes Connect or Google Play Store to override that.
In my experience, it's always been a really enticing idea to be able to have that.
Yep.
Automatic flows for stuff coming out of a commit, and you grab all the commits that were coming from the merge and like put them all together. But in reality, it's like the product team want to go control the actual message that goes out to the customer. So they actually want to control those things. So it never ends up actually being that sweeter.
So I'm the only app developer in the team, so I am kind of the product team as well. So I do what I feel like. But yeah, if I was, I guess, the head developer of a team, I would be annoyed at my developers if they were messing up Git history and just putting the same release notes in several commits. And if I was, in a bigger team with a marketing department, I'd be annoyed if it came down to just a developer typing something wrong there.
Some of the rubbish I put in a commit message.
Yeah.
I don't want that kind of
Because, I've come close a few times with, I forgot to change the version number. Well, that's in a lot of my commits. Don't accidentally trigger too many builds. So if you're just committing all day, make sure you don't have a trigger on that branch, or you can burn through your build time without even noticing it. And your testers will get annoyed at how many emails they're getting. If you've got an app that's been triggered automatically, and you go into App Centre and try to look at the build logs, it'll often just kind of look like something's gone wrong. If it doesn't work, don't worry too much. Just come back 5 minutes later. It'll probably work. Also, if you see in the build log that your mono version isn't configured correctly, it's probably a different problem. Scroll through deeply into the logs and you'll probably find something else. That's just, your mono version isn't configured correctly, almost just means seg fault. Something bad happened, look somewhere else. Okay, Test Cloud. I don't use this much, but it's got a lot of big potential. You write UI tests that click through, pretend to do all the things that really happen in your app, and you can run them on 497 different devices, ranging from iOS 8 through to 11.4. Actually, no, I wrote this slide a week ago. They've got 12 in there now. Android 2.2 through to 8.1. When I was in there a week ago, no. I'm sure that'll change soon. I'm sure it will come, but this is really useful where if you've got a customer who's complaining the app crashes on some weird device and you don't have one of them, because I've only got 3 Androids and 2 iPads, but it doesn't work on their Huawei or whatever, you can run it in the cloud, get those logs, and before you're even released to the public, if you say 10 different Android devices, this is what we got. I write UI tests and I run them on my own local machine, but I haven't really got into this part of App Centre yet.
You use the one where just the kind of smoke test, you got that smoke test one?
Yeah, the run on real device. Yeah, I use that, and that tells you if you've done something drastically wrong. And that's usually going to be, some kind of serious. Well, I don't find there are many things that get past build, but that won't boot up. But yeah.
So because that adds a little bit of build time.
Yeah, that's 10 minutes. As long as you, like when I do a push, I know that it's not going to be in the App Store until tomorrow anyway. So usually 10 minutes means nothing. If you're distributing to internal testers, and if you're doing that a lot, so when I've got testers give me feedback, I'll fix a few bugs, send it out to them. I'm doing that a few times a week. I turn it off on those branches because that adds up quickly.
So maybe on your prod release, but not on your CI.
Yeah. Next step is distribute. Already talked about a few bits of this, which is it's triggered by the build, releases straight to Google Play or App Store or emailed out. Cool new feature. Yeah? Yep. I've never tried. It might. Sorry, I don't know. So depending on what I do know is that when you set up an iOS project, when you go to distribute, it gives you a bunch of options that are appropriate for iOS. When you're in Android, you get different buttons and stuff like that to suit you. I guess there's probably something in UWP, but yeah, never tried. In terms of the iOS side of things, they now automatically collect the UDID from a tester and will re-sign your app and send it back out to them without even having to do a build. So if I invite someone here to be a tester, it'll send you a link, you'll click register device. 5 minutes later, you've got an email with a new version of the app that you can install on your device. So no more copying down long UDIDs and putting them into iTunes or Apple Developer Center and re-downloading distribution profiles. They've just very recently made that very easy. You can set up different distribution rules based on which branch, which I talked about a bit before. So if you push to devel, your developers get it. Push to testing, everyone gets it. Push to master, distribute to the App Store. So what that looks like in here when you're on this new one we've just made, I'm assuming there we go, our build succeeded. If I go into distribution, we've got our collaborators, or you can just invite more people. It shows all the devices that my people have. If there's any unprovisioned devices, they'll come here. And there used to be a register my devices button. Now I just say automatically manage devices. Give my Apple developer account and the appropriate certificate. And now whenever someone registers with a device, and I had to give them the link and they have to log in, that automatically reprovisions it and sends them a new version. So I can just forget about all that. You can also say new release, select one of your build branches, choose who it goes to. And this is all fairly similar when you go over to one of your Android, Android projects. So when you go into distribute, you can see I've got a testers group here. Two different Lachlans. And it'll tell you the different releases that you've sent out. Any questions around distribute? Or should I keep on chugging on? Cool. This first point, when I said device registration, provisioning, and re-signing is slow, if it looks like it didn't work, wait half an hour. I wrote that slide a week ago. It's now so quick, and you don't even have to think about it. It used to be when they clicked register, you'd then need to go onto your computer, click re-sign, and then it'd take about half an hour and they'd get it emailed to them. But it would still say in the dashboard that it hadn't worked. So you never really know whether it's worked or not, because it would work after half an hour, but take 2 days to tell you that it worked. Now it's a 2-minute process that requires no input from you. That sort of stuff's much easier in Android because anyone's just allowed to install anything they like. I mentioned that before, the release notes, be careful. And yeah, don't release something that says, damn it, I forgot to bump the version number. Diagnostics. So there's two parts of diagnostics. There's crashes and also errors. So this is a NuGet package you put into your, just into the source code, and you enter your API key that you get from AppCenter. tells you what kind of crash it was, what device they were on. If you're getting a whole lot of null reference exceptions in the same part, it groups them together and says this affected 20 people on these devices. With the errors and issues, they keep changing the name. Instead of crashes, that's when you've put your own line in a try-catch block sort of thing to record errors that don't kill the app, but that you want to know about. So when we look at my diagnostics here, I've got various crashes. This is embarrassing. That's enough. This one has happened 34 times, 7 different users. Oops. In version 8 of the app. So 8.1's out now. So hopefully, I don't know, that might mean that they have, it's not happening, or it might just mean that they haven't updated yet.
That's a null reference in 138 of main.
Yeah, that's a bad one. I need to look into that.
But that must be easy to fix.
Yeah, could well be. But these are the sort of things that never happen on my devices, but are happening on users' devices. And without this reporting, you don't have much of an idea of what it is. And from my customers, who are mostly chefs and not very technical, they'll just call up and say the app doesn't work. And it can take a long time to get any more detail than the app doesn't work. And on some Android devices, I've had it that it just won't even get past the splash screen. And then in that case, it is kind of fair enough that they're just saying app doesn't work. But it can be that 10 steps in, they're doing something wrong. If they're doing something wrong, maybe that's bad UI or bad UX. But if they can tell me what it is, it's much easier to fix. This makes those things a bit easier.
That particular one, they don't create that? That must stay there by somewhere. Go to the right and, no, go down and click on the actual device. Now go raw.
Okay, I've never been in here before.
Oh, this is good in here. This really gives you a good look. Especially like on
Yeah.
my machine, this comes back in, it's still obfuscated from the hell out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, so that gives me something that I can really look into, and not just can, need to.
Set page.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of stuff there for me to do. Errors I can't. Okay, so your crashes do come up. Some of your crashes come up in your errors as well. I don't think I've really set up errors in this project.
Is errors new?
Yes. It also keeps changing its name.
I only noticed errors this morning.
Yep. And then when you click on the errors button, it takes you to the issues page. It used to be called issues. It's hard to keep up. And the documentation's often inconsistent. It'll get there. But yeah, at the moment, it's confusing.
At least the errors are real errors.
Yeah.
You said before that didn't cause a crash.
Oh, well, usually,
So
well,
that's your definition
I
of
don't know how don't remember how I've set up this particular project, but the way I usually use it is an error is reported when you manually in your code say AppCenter.track error, and you pass in the exception that you've caught. So if you catch an exception without throwing it,
I've never done a say track error.
yeah,
It must be new.
I'll show you the code in a sec. But yeah, it's useful for if you know that there's an error that happens somewhere in the app and you want a bit more context as to why, and is this really happening all the time? And it may well be that it's a network connectivity issue that presents itself as a null reference exception or something like that.
Well, like null reference exception.
Yeah.
After the track.
So yeah, when I say it's things that didn't cause a crash, I'm saying that I always put it in track in a catch block where I haven't then thrown as well. If you throw, then yeah, that'll be a real crash.
You only get it if you have track error.
Yeah.
It must be just
Um,
somewhere.
yeah, so put them in a catch block basically is what I'd say. A couple of gotchas around here. When you initialize it in the nougats, you have to say AppCenter dot set enabled, then you say analytics.set enabled, then you say crashes.set enabled. That's done programmatically because it means users can opt in or out. And the documentation doesn't need to tell you have to do it for analytics and crashes. It says it'll just work for AppCenter if you do the AppCenter. So you do need those extra 2 lines of code. So there, that bottom line there, analytics.track event, that's when you do analytics. You can also do crashes.track error, and that's how and that takes as its input an exception rather than a string. So then you've got your stat trace.
Could you get a track error without actually putting one in?
What's that, sorry?
Could you get a track error? Yeah, with the report.
Yep.
Without actually putting an analytics track error in?
Someone's got to catch the error, so and do it then. So if no one ever catches the error, that becomes a crash. If you catch it somewhere and don't re-throw it, then it doesn't. So,
I'll just go back to it.
and also diagnostics or issues or crashes or errors, they've all been used for different things at different times. They're sometimes synonymous, sometimes different. Be careful in the documentation. Analytics, that same thing as how I set it up there, but then throughout your code, you go track analytics. So the main place I do it is on the open page from my master detail. So that tells me how much is each part of my app being used, what do the customers really care about. So yeah, you get basic analytics of what devices are my users using just from that analytics.start or whatever it is. But if you want to know what's going on throughout your app and how they're using it, you need to put it at various places. You only get kind of graphs and aggregated data and a few things for free. If you want to really dig into the data and do your own stuff, you have to export it to Azure Analytics, and that costs money. I don't know how much. I haven't done it. I'll show you a couple of things that I do with that. So my analytics, I can see here, hang on, I'll go over this one, will be a good example. Analytics, oh yeah, so, oh no, yeah, we did that. Analytics, 500 monthly users on this app, 200 weekly, which is up 9%, daily down 31%, Wednesdays are slow, Mondays are busy because they're doing their paperwork. Fridays are busy because they're getting ready for the weekend. I guess that's what that is. I don't think people like my app less. Tells me iPhone X is the most popular app device, then iPhone 7, then iPad, then iPhone 8. Session duration unknown, doesn't tell me much. So that's telling me almost nothing. Maybe I just need to set it up a little bit differently. I think basically how that works is based on how many times, whenever there's another analytics tracked, it can build up on that. An unknown, I think, tends to be if they kind of leave it open. But yeah, I haven't found much use out of that given most of my sessions are unknown. Almost everyone's in Australia. I bet you the unknowns are mostly in Australia too.
What's that mean?
If they're, depending on their ISP, basically, some ISPs are configured that they don't report your geolocation back. Yeah, I think basically if you're using a mobile data connection, you'll definitely know where they are. If they're going through an ISP, maybe it's, some do, some don't. English is most popular, a few Chinese and a few Greek users. Active use per version, 8.1, everyone's on board. 8.2 hasn't been released yet, so that's okay. That's just been done internally. Few people still using 8. The lower ones are barely used. You'll see in Android that people don't uptake the newest version as often, and that's largely because iOS make it difficult to disable auto updates, whereas in Android it's more of an opt-in kind of thing. I can then also look at events. And if I go into page opened, and this has just been done with kind of one track error inside my master detail view. Page opened, here we go. Most of the time people are using the app for ordering, then for receiving, then there's the dashboard. whiteboard isn't used that much at all. So this gives me an idea of where do I really need to pay attention of good UX and error handling, and where should I not waste my time. That's fairly pointless given that you can only distribute to iOS. I think maybe they had an idea that in that you could then also have.
How are you getting the email addresses down the bottom on the platform?
Yeah, hang on. I'm about to show you in a code example, and I have actually disabled that because I decided I didn't want that data in there, but I did used to be collecting it. So analytics.track event. So this is in my master detail page. Anytime they open it, it tells me page is the key and selected menu. App is the app codes that tells me if they're using Cooking the Books or Drinking the Profits. Platform, iOS or Android, and I can put any other things I like in. So I used to have email, and I don't know, it's in the app somewhere, but that's basically where that was coming from. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, as I said, taking it out. Probably shouldn't have put that in a video. So yeah, that's kind of how I use analytics.
Blur it out.
Thank you.
Google just did not
Yeah.
allow you to have email addresses floating over there.
Yeah, but if I'm doing it in HTTPS, then they don't know.
Was in HTTP.
Okay. Analytics gotchas, a lot of them the same as the crashes, because they're very similar stacks. One thing is that all that data, unless you pay, you can't get to all of it. You should disable it when you're in debug config or something like that, or you'll be swaying it with all your test data. The log flow doesn't seem to work too much. The log flow is meant to be there for debugging, to check if your data is really coming through, but I find it's buggy enough that it's not worth having for debugging. Sometimes. A lot of the time I'll open it up and it'll just sit there for 10 minutes and do nothing, even when I'm clicking on things. Yeah. As I said, you need to enable AppCenter and Analytics and crashes. And your Android and iOS analytics are in separate projects, not aggregated. So you might consider that a good thing or a bad thing, but just something to be aware of, that you won't get them all together. Push, I've never even used. I do all my push notifications through OneSignal. You're only allowed 5 audiences. There's no kind of targeted marketing, but basically you can, this is really good for if you want to send out a push notification to all of your user bases or all your iOS users or something like that. But it doesn't let me do a notification saying, this user, you've got a new invoice waiting for you, sort of thing. There is an API available, so you can send stuff to it from your server. Just yesterday or something, they announced that there are more features coming late in 2018, including those user-specific targeted notifications, but I think that's going to cost $20 a month. So yeah, I use OneSignal. It works well. It's got a nice server-side SDK to work with as well, so that abstracts a lot away, and you're not dealing with actual API requests. You just say, send notification to this person, do this stuff.
So you've never used Firebase?
No, although I know that OneSignal do use Firebase under the hood, and AppCenter also use Firebase to do all their stuff. Seems like everyone does. So yeah, you can also target certain versions of the app, a few other things like that. But yeah, haven't used the actual AppCenter push. But it's in there, something to think about if you want to have that all handled in one dashboard. So there's API and command line interface. Absolutely anything you can do throughout the user interface, you can do it from an API yourself or using the command line interface. They tend to expose the API endpoints before they build the feature into the UI, so sometimes you can get to things before you can in the web. So yeah, a few different things you could do with that. Push notifications generated from the server. You can put all your build statuses together in a dashboard. you could make an app that tells you how all your apps are going and to send out notifications easily. Advanced build distribute. I'm sure the sky's the limit. So with the test cloud at the moment, you have to trigger that from the command line interface, and you have to install Node to run test cloud at the moment, which feels a bit odd given it came out of the .NET Xamarin world, but that's where we are at the moment. And yeah, the test is barely integrated into AppCenter. It's still kind of its own thing. In terms of what the API can do, they've just got a great big Swagger doc that tells you everything. You can send out invitations, you can check your user, organizations, apps, you can get what apps are, what their build status is, you can tell an app to distribute stacks of stuff. There's more details there, and you can do the classic try it out if you put your token in. And to authenticate that, in here you just go into Butterfingers, account settings, and API tokens, and get a new API token. You can choose full access or read only, and then you can make your own anything that does anything in here. Once you've generated a token, you have to keep it somewhere safe, because after that you can never get it again, but you can have as many as you like for free. So if I lose one, I just make another one.
Their claim to fame was that it was always, AppCenter was always API first.
Yeah.
So it's all, everything is there. It's written in the API first, and then they go and drive that from the UI. So your build tasks that would go into VSTS and actually call over to AppCenter to go and do the build, because they didn't want to have to manage a machine. So yeah, you can do anything.
I think they've kind of cleaned it up now, but in the early days of AppCenter, if you looked at the activity, your network activity, a lot of the API calls were still going to Hockey App. They kind of put the UI on before they migrated the full API, but these all seem to be the AppCenter in here now. As I said, if you lose your API key, it's gone, but don't worry, have as many as you like. Kind of limited auth, as I can tell. There's no clean way of, if I was building an AppCenter app, that they can kind of log in and only give me rights to certain things. I'm not sure. I think there is probably a way around, but it doesn't. They haven't got an easily and well documented OAuth kind of thing. Someone at the last user group asked him, and I hijacked his question of, why isn't there an AppCenter app for iOS? And he said there is one for Android, but it's called something weird, and there's a Hockey app for Android that still works somehow with AppCenter. And the answer I gave is because you haven't made one yet. It's an open API. You can make an AppCenter app, and that's exactly what I did. I plan to, yes. Oh, hang on, I've got... Oh, yep, they're the right keys. Everyone always tells me don't put your API keys in the repository, but it's so much easier to. So I'm going to open source something. I have to learn how to do that. But yes, I do plan to get it to a stage where I'll release it to iOS and Android app stores and open source it. I think that's okay. So at the moment you have to put your big long token in. I've got it so that if it's connected to the debugger, it puts it in automatically for me. I'm just gonna scale that down a little. So that's gone in there, got a list of all of my apps, and it's checking the last build status for all of them. So This is an early stage of the app. There'll be some kind of nice badge, but for now it's succeeded, never built, or not configured. And we can see Unofficial App Centre App. That's the one that we just built then together, and build success.
The actual build badges.
Yeah, they're surprisingly hard to get that URL out of the API. To get it, you've already made a few calls just so that you can get the little bits of the API. And like, by the time I've done all this work, I'd rather just embed the asset in the app myself. And this app, so yeah, there's that. It's just a dumb about page. And I've built a few of the features of App Centre into here already. So when we click help, click it a couple of times. When I go back to the analytics of that, like this, more on my iOS, come into analytics. Oh, yeah. And then into events. I can see dashboard's been opened 12 times, help clicked on dashboard 8 times, about page opened 7 times, app's been run twice. So that's when I click on about. On my about page, I've just gone analytics.track event, just put a string in there. You can put more stuff in there if you want, but I've just done it with one dumb string. And then on my dashboard, where is it on that? Huh. Oh, that's the view model. My dashboard got the same thing, track event, dashboard page opened. So when you're using a master detail view, you can just put that in one spot and it'll tell you about all your top level apps. I've also got a crash built in and error tracking built in. So that's what I was talking about before, crashes.track error, given an exception. So that's for a caught one, and crash clicked, that's just got a not implemented exception. So when I click crash, that has crashed. If we go over to my diagnostics, so in crashes, there's a group which is a not implemented exception. It's affected one user. And go into it somewhere, it'll tell you all the details about it. First happened at 2:27. So yeah. And then in my errors, which is the bit that you have to put inside each catch block, this is an error that I know happens because my models aren't set up right in my API. Here's an error that I put in there, and stack traces is empty. So there we go. It tells me Newtonsoft couldn't deserialize the error message that came from the server into an app. And this is set up with distribution as well. So if I just want to invite someone, I go testers, I can just say, anyone here got an iPhone with email on it that wants my app? What's your email address? Or do you not want it on the video? DIMOSS at mac.com. You'll get an email any second now. When you open it up, you have to open it in Safari. You can't use Chrome. You'll need to log in with either Google or a Microsoft account or a few different things. Click register my device, and then this will automatically resend my app, send you an email, and you can install it straight to your phone. And then every time I push, you'll get another notification. There's a new version of the App Centre app ready to go. So this is why, well, now I'm not allowed to use the master branch for all my commits anymore because you'll get annoyed. And I'll be going through my build minutes. In terms of kind of the API calls to the API, it's just a dumb old web client that can do GET. It's just got endpoints. That's about all we've got time for. Anything before we wind up? Cool.
Any other questions anyone has?
Cool.
No, you know the build that you're doing.
Yep.
Can we set it up like a nightly build where all the developers, is that easy to do? When you got a field developer, most of our stuff will be all checked in.
Yep.
And then you can build. Morning, we normally
Yeah.
send a message up. Obviously, it's going to be all Slack from the App Center.
Yep, that's not something they've got built in there as an obvious feature, but you could, I don't know, have a cron job running on a Heroku VM somewhere that calls the API, or yeah, have a Slack bot triggered to call it. But yeah, that's not built in, but the API endpoints are there so that it wouldn't be too hard if you've got something to do the scheduling. Yeah, yeah, that would be nice if it wasn't just the dumb push, but yeah. Nightly builds.
There's nothing for pull requests, though, is there?
No, so all your source control is still done in one of your hosting platforms. So it does VSTS or whatever they call it now, or GitHub or Bitbucket. So you still manage your pull requests and all your source control in there. And it's just whenever anything gets merged and pushed on master or testing or wherever you've got it configured, that happens.
One of the attractive things I think with Azure DevOps
Yep.
is the ability to build on a pull request, right? So I can
Yeah.
do my pull request, I can run my build with my unit tests on it, and I can know before I actually integrate to main that I've screwed footage, right? So
I guess what the closest you could get here is you would have a new features branch or something like that, and so when you're in GitHub or wherever, merge that pull request into this other branch and have it do the build on there, but you still have to merge that pull request into a branch, even if it's not a real branch that anyone sees.
So you could, if you like on VSTS, you could, or Azure DevOps, you could have it on the pull request and say you're triggering a build on App Center, and then it wouldn't unless that worked, it wouldn't actually integrate to main. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've got some pizzas outside, so thank you very much. Thanks, guys.